All right. How are we all doing today? Kyle, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me here, Jason. Appreciate it.
Of course, I'm excited here. For some of you out there have already seen, you've probably seen the write up. I also know I put an email out with it. Um, for those of you who don't know, uh, we're here to talk today. Kyle Simpson. We're going to be talking all about uh, the Kickstarter campaign for the You Don't Know JS series. I want to give a little background context on why this is important to me and why we're here today. For those who don't know, I met Kyle, what was it, like 2013 or 14? Right around about like
I think
7
it
or
would have been 13. I think it would have been
8. Yeah,
13.
it was a while ago now. But I was actually one of the worst developers y'all have ever seen. And I know nowadays y'all see, it says nice principal engineer doing great things with code. Yeah, that's great and all. But I'll tell you, back in the beginning, I was probably one of the worst. I remember showing up to Kyle's class. You were teaching me about thunks, and I was like, "What in the world did I miss? What is a thunk, and who teaches thunks?" Lo and behold, I do use them now today. Um, but it's funny looking back at one of the big catalysts in my earlier part of my career was actually attending your 3-day training. And I
Mhm.
still have a lot of those JS fiddles where I would save them, put them in a JS fiddle so I could see them run and test them out. But what people see in success in me now, they don't realize the failures I had earlier on.
Mm.
And one of the ways that I was able to get out of the kind of the path of failure was not only find some mentors, but to the point I actually made in that post and probably see in the description is the mentors you didn't see, such as Kyle, and to the content and the stuff and the way he teaches. Oh, we're going to talk about that today. Get ready for that. But this all goes back to how you probably feel at times you need help with JavaScript and you want to get better at it. Well, we're going to talk about that today and how to do that and some of the stuff we're going to provide to you. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to get talking about this. Kyle, do you want to give a quick intro into what is You Don't Know JS and
Yeah.
kind of a little bit about the Kickstarter? And we're going to talk more about how we are going to do some actual special stuff for y'all today out there listening. So, Kyle, I'll pass it over to you for the moment.
Yeah. Well, first of all, super thanks for Jason for you having me.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, when he contacted me, he didn't think I remembered him. But I did. I do actually remember him. And he's being rather modest. He was, first of all, a great attendee, and he asked a bunch of really great questions. And as a teacher, that's the thing you want, is you want people that are really engaged, really interested, and really curious. So if you were looking for like a one sentence summary for what I have been trying to do, it's been trying to help everybody else in the community be more curious, ask more questions of your code, and don't accept, oh, you can't know that, or oh, that's unknowable, or oh, that's just what some blog somewhere said and it doesn't make any sense. Asking those questions, being curious like that, being engaged and owning what it is that you write is my mission. That's what I'm trying to challenge people to do. The book series, when I say You Don't Know JS, or the second edition, I added on the word yet because I wanted to make it really clear that it's not an insult to people to say you don't know this language. I don't know it. Brendan Ike doesn't know it. Nobody knows JavaScript completely.
Yeah.
Um, and there are so many things that I have learned about JavaScript that I don't even like fully remember. I'll have people quote me parts of my book that I wrote, and they'll quote me parts of it, and I'll be like, "Yeah, I wrote that, but I don't remember that." So it's not possible for any person to really be at that moment where they feel like, "Oh, I have everything mastered," like it's some sort of checklist that you're trying to go down. Really and truly, what this is about adopting the mindset that I am constantly need to be more curious. I wanted to say one other thing before we go on, which was what Jason was talking about how people may look at him now with his success, which I'm thrilled about. And if I had even a tiny little portion to do with that, like I'm so blessed. I'm so thankful that anybody out there has been able to benefit in some way. But this is a really common occurrence, or I don't know whether it's a problem or not, but it's a common experience that people have, that and you may have heard this before, but I love referring back to this. When we compare our when we compare other people's highlight reels to our own blooper reels. If you think about that, what we're saying is, I know all of my own internal like failures and mistakes, and all I see of other people out there is all of their successes, all the best things that they put out about themselves. And that's not a fair comparison. And so I just wanted to like point out that even though Jason feels that way about like maybe where he started versus where he's come, and he may know, you know, the things that he used to struggle with. What he's done is exactly what I hope every person that learns from me has done, which is to take that and own that and run with that and make that part of your identity. Don't be afraid to admit those things. I get people that will ask me all the time, like, you know, how do you just magically know so much about JavaScript? And there is no magical answer to that. There was a time when I would say completely inaccurate things about JavaScript, and more experienced developers than me would sort of dunk on me like, oh, that's not how it works. And I determined that I was going to ask more questions about the language than anybody else. And I wasn't going to stop until I got the answers to those questions. And 15 plus years on, I still have questions that I'm looking for answers to, right? So that's all I'm really doing, is asking those questions and being willing to share it. So any of you out there that are looking at somebody like me, looking at somebody like Jason, and thinking you're not at that level because you don't see the same highlight reel that you may see from someone with some public success, I just want to encourage you to say that everybody's on this journey. And the most successful journeys are the ones where people are brave enough to share it with others. If you wait around until all you have is the highlight reel, until all you have is everything's perfect and you've mastered it all, then all the rest of us missed out on the most important part. Mm-hmm. We didn't get to be part of the journey. And that's where all the real value actually happens. So I just wanted to call that out. That's like the main like core advice that I always come back to people, is to encourage them to own the fact that you're on a journey of getting to know this stuff better, and challenge yourself to always be trying to do that.
No, I'm totally with you on that. And it's interesting nowadays because people see those inspirational posts I have, and like they like those, and they wonder sometimes, but did he ever feel my pain? Did he ever go on this journey that I'm on? And oh, hell yeah. Oh yeah. Fun fact, did you know in corporate America, there's a thing called remedial Java, and you have to take it twice if you suck that bad? Yeah, that was me. That's not a thing, by the way. You actually can't, and yet they didn't fire me back in the day. It was amazing. I'm so surprised I got to keep my job. Like and these books actually were part of that catalyst as I turned it around. But the journey is so correct. It is spot on, Kyle. Well, I want to transition this now into part of why we're here today. Not only am I putting my money where my mouth is, I want to make sure that y'all know exactly what I'm doing, because I want to invest in Kyle. I want to invest in the community. I want to invest in all y'all. And one of the things is, right, with the Kickstarter campaign Kyle is going for these books, we would love for you to take the time to go over to his Kickstarter campaign. You can go search for it, or you can hit the bit.ly link here. Johnny, who works with us here at CCFL, he'll be putting in a link he'll be putting that bit.ly link in the link down below. I can't see comments just yet, but we'll get to that if we get the time. But part of what I also want to mention, I was telling Kyle this right before we got on, is I seriously want to invest in y'all. So I'm going to take one of Kyle's top pledge spots. And with Kyle's pledge spots, what do you get with it? You get some time with Kyle. And so what I want to do with that time then is I want to invest in the community. And there's two things we want to tackle. And that is, how do you approach JavaScript in interviews to pass more interviews to get the jobs you're looking for most? Because I talk with tons of you daily, and this is what you want to know most. And it's what could really drive a lot of impact to get that first job you're looking for. Now, this goes for all levels, but I know predominantly the people watching are probably junior developers right now. The second thing I want to take with some of the extra time with Kyle for y'all is talking about, okay, if you just got out of a boot camp, you just got out of university, you're self-taught, what's the next step? What do we have to do to get you to that expert level so that you can grow in your career and you can, and I'm not saying you have to take a step like I did in my career, going from all the way up to principal engineer in 8 years. Not saying you have to do it like that, but if you want to follow a footstep to mine, how do you take time when you get out of a boot camp to grow effectively and know you're doing the right stuff? And so there's two really big topics we want to take there. But here's the one caveat I have. I'm willing to invest that in y'all. All I ask to attend those, because it will be, you can't get in unless you pledge at least even just $1 to Kyle's Kickstarter campaign. You do that, you can come jump on with us, watch live, ask questions. Well, we're going to see on how if we can do it live or not. We're going to figure out how to do that properly with the stuff. We'll get to that part later. But if y'all take the time to at least go check out the Kickstarter campaign and pledge and support today, you will get access to that guaranteed. And that's how I'm going to invest in Kyle and invest in y'all watching. It don't get much better than that. I'm pretty excited about that, Kyle.
I'm actually thrilled about it because one of the long-term things that I've always, I mean, many of you out there have read some or all of my books, and I'm thrilled about that. Many of you have also probably watched one or more of my courses. All of my courses are up on a platform called Front End Masters, and a few of them made them onto some other platforms like Pluralsight and whatever. But like some of you have taken some of those classes. And the interesting thing about it is that while doing the books and the courses in those fashion has allowed me to impact this broader community. And I'm, again, so thrilled. I can't even believe that I got privileged to have that chance to have that kind of an impact. But one of the things that's sort of paradoxical about it is there is probably, I don't think it's unfair to say, hundreds of thousands of people that have in some way, shape, or form read or taken courses or whatever, been impacted by all of that. But you know, it's such a tiny, tiny little sliver of that larger number that I've had any kind of like communication with. So I know in my mind that there's all these people out there that may have benefited, and I'm thrilled by it. But what I love the most is having the connection with people, closing the loop. And so my whole career, it's been this kind of like tension of like, yeah, I want to push stuff out because I want to have a bigger impact. I want to get people better jobs and more understanding of what they do. I want all those things to happen. But I also love even more the fact that we get to sit and like talk and chat and answer questions. That is actually my favorite part of getting to do what I do. And so I was thrilled when Jason contacted me and said he wanted to go this route. I was like, that's perfect. Yeah. That's exactly what I want. And I'd far rather spend my time doing that than recording some other course where a bunch of people will watch it and I won't ever get to like be part of it. I won't ever get to like close the loop and have the joy of seeing what people can do with it.
Oh, and get ready, because for those watching, I know because I talk to a lot of them daily and I interact with a lot of them over the course of their career at some point, especially coming out of boot camp or in boot camp. And these people are hungry. They want to learn. They want to grow. It's interesting where I came from university at times earlier in my career. It felt like people just assumed things would be given to me as a university graduate, you know, the college degree. And a lot of the people that I interact with don't have that luxury. They chose to switch careers, and you don't get to switch careers in the middle of your career to then go to a 4-year university. You got 6 months. And so when you got 6 months, you're extra hungry to change your life around. And that's actually what's been exciting about the boot camp industry. I think there's at times there's parts of the industry that I wish would teach a little bit better, but for the majority, people are getting that knowledge. And if they can get that extra bit of help to get that first job, they can change their life around, which is really exciting. So I'm excited when you get to talk to them and when you actually get to sit down with us when we plan and do these sessions. It's going to be phenomenal.
I love getting to do it. I do a weekly office hour at the company that I work for. I work for a company called Mural, and I do a weekly office hour, and people show up, and that's my favorite part of the week. And just for an hour, I don't have any other meetings, no other requirements of me. I just get to sit and chat with people and talk about the things that I know and maybe impart a little bit of wisdom. I wanted to take just a brief moment, if I could, Jason, to give a little bit more context around the Kickstarter and the book series for anybody that isn't aware of exactly what's going on here. So back in 2014, I began publishing with O'Reilly Media what became the first edition of the You Don't Know JS books. That actually came from a Kickstarter campaign because I was like, is anybody going to even buy JavaScript books? So we did a Kickstarter campaign to prove whether or not there was interest in the books. And there was a big interest expressed back then. So I wrote those books, and it was going to be 3, and it ended up being 6 books, over 1,100 pages, and we published those all with O'Reilly. That was in 2014 and early 2015 when those books came out. JavaScript's changed a lot since early 2015.
Yeah.
And so in the back of my head, year after year that went by, I'm like, wow, I really need to update some of these books. Like, there's still a lot that's completely valid. Like, when you focus on the core of the JavaScript language, the good news is the core of the JavaScript language doesn't change out from underneath you. It's not like the stuff I wrote was invalid, but my perspective grew. My maturity with my understanding of topics and the way that I explain them and the way that I recommend people to approach them, it grew and it changed. And so I had this like dream, like I want to do at least a second edition of these books. And over that ensuing period of time, publishing changed radically. And it turned out that my relationship with O'Reilly wasn't really going to continue. And so I wasn't going to publish them with them. And so I was like, okay, at some point, I'm just going to have to like self-publish these. I want them to be a reality. I'm going to self-publish. So in December of 2019, I started writing and getting ready to push out the first of the second edition books. In January, I published the first two books that I had finished, which are the Get Started and the Scope Enclosures. And that was under the new name, You Don't Know JS Yet, to sort of strike a more hopeful tone. Like, you don't know it, but you're going to get there. We're all going to keep moving further along. We're going to move along our journey, right? So I started publishing those books, and I had this grand plan where all 6 books were going to get written and published back to back to back. They were going to be out by like June of 2020, and everything was going to be great. And then some of you may know there was this little thing like the pandemic that hit, and it derailed everything in the world. I ended up having to like go take a job because my business model like collapsed, and book sales stopped. A lot of people just stopped buying books. I don't know why, but a lot of people stopped buying books. And so I didn't get to like keep that plan of finishing the books. And they've metaphorically and in reality, literally been on the shelf for the last 18 months, kind of in hibernation. But I still have that same dream that I had years back. Like, I really want for the community to have this updated and refreshed and more mature and more seasoned perspective on the language, because I don't know how long we're going to be writing and reading books about JavaScript. We may be moving into a period of time where people only consume stuff online, and maybe books, 10 years from now, maybe there isn't such a thing as people buying tech books or whatever. But I wanted to leave that mark on JavaScript and on the community. I wanted to leave. I feel that responsibility to do so. So the dream to bring this to life has been there, and I haven't been able to achieve it because I have to work a full-time job and I got a family, and it's hard to like justify the time, to take off and do it. So that's what this Kickstarter is about. It's about helping me realize that dream. And I divided it into 4 phases. So the first phase, which was the minimum funding level, which we hit just a couple of days ago. First phase was just get some rough drafts of the 4 remaining books written. Just so there's something out there. I can get my thoughts that are up in my head out on digital paper, if you will. The second phase, which is the first stretch goal, was to actually fully finish them, do all the editing, all the polishing of the content of those books. A lot of people don't realize that writing a book, it's like 50% actually typing out the words, and another 50% of the effort is all this other stuff that you don't know. And until I self-published, I had no idea. But like hiring copy editors and content editors and doing all the polish work to make the books, getting all the graphics and stuff. The second stretch goal, the third phase of this, is to actually do all the work to do typesetting and formatting and get it into an ebook form. So it's like a PDF or an EPUB or something that you can read on your Kindle or something like that. And then the final phase is getting them actually formatted so that they can be printed in physical paper form. So I don't know if we're going to make, we're probably not, right? Like the big goal, the big stretch goal to get us all the way to that final dream of them being all in print. I don't know if we're going to make that in this Kickstarter campaign, but we've made a huge start along that way. And anything that anybody can do to help me, $1 that you pledge, but even more than the $1 that you may pledge, is helping me spread the word. Is if there are 500,000 people or more out there that have in some way, shape, or form been inspired or impacted by the content that I've done, we have at the moment 330 of those people pledge to the campaign. Imagine what we could do if we could somehow get this word out there. I don't have the communication channels to talk to all of them, but you people out there, you know more people than I do. And so just more than the dollar that you can pledge is helping me get that word out and telling people, I read this book, it changed my career, you should go and back it. If you can do that with me in this last 7 days of this campaign, we got 7 days left, I think we can really make a huge chunk of this dream happen. And so that, I just want to share my heart. That's what I'm trying to do. I want this there because I want everybody to be able to benefit from it.
And we will definitely do our part in as best as we can. I'll make sure that my audience knows all about it. They'll probably hear something again soon on it, especially with what I was talking about, how I'm going to pledge and how I will take those hours and those time with you one-on-one and share it with them and share content that will help them grow in their careers. And as long as they invest as well with me and put some support up there for you as well too. Now, I got a couple questions. Do you still have a tiny bit of time for a couple questions?
Yeah, I got time. Before we jump into those questions, let me say one more thing. I mentioned that people can throw in even $1 into the campaign. And as Jason said, if you throw in $1, we'll be able to track from the link. So use the link and we'll be able to track who did it. And if you throw in that $1, we'll be able to get you access to these private chat session events that we're going to run. And those will be, over the next couple of months. So that's not going to be next week, but we'll get all that stuff set up and you'll be able to come to those. But whether you give $1 or whether you give $10 or $100, whatever you feel like you can do, I'm grateful for it. Some of the reward levels on the campaign include being able to get the first 2 books in the series that already exist, either in ebook form or, depending on the level, even print form. And if you choose that, that's great. If you choose a lower level that doesn't include the actual books, what I wanted to do to provide to this audience, I created some coupon codes for the 2 of those books, as well as another book that's not in the series, but a book that I wrote on applying functional programming principles to JavaScript. It's called Functional Light.js. All 3 of those books I've discounted to $10 each in ebook form with these coupon codes, and we'll get those dropped here in the chat. So whatever you do or can't do on the campaign, if you want to also just get a discounted version of the book of any or all of those 3 books, please take those coupon codes and use that. That's exclusive for this audience as well. So I want you to have the books in as whatever format and mechanism works best for you.
Awesome. We appreciate that, Kyle. You can send it to me right now, or his name's Johnny Scherer in the chat. He'll make sure he gets that, or hell, just put it in the chat. I know I got a couple people looks on YouTube, a couple on LinkedIn. I think I see one on Facebook, a couple on Facebook that are in the chat. So I see a couple different avenues. Send it to me. I'll make sure I get it out one way or another. People will see it, whether it's now in an email form. We'll make sure.
Jason, you should have those links in our LinkedIn chat, the one between you and I, in our messaging. So I have those 3 links right in there. Okay. If you or somebody else can drop those in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will grab those.
I unfortunately can't actually do chat for some reason. I don't have a little box to do the chat. I don't know why, but I see all of you that are there in the chat. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I would be writing if I could.
I got those over to Johnny. Great. I'll get them in, and actually, yeah, I will get those in, and I will also.
All right. So you had other questions, Jason.
Oh yeah, I got 3 questions that I want to make sure people hear the answer to, because I think these are going to be good. My first question to you is, and by the way, actually, as we get into these, I want to make sure that y'all comment down below or comment in the thread. What are some of the biggest questions and struggles you have with JavaScript? That is something I definitely want to know, because some of the questions I'm going to ask Kyle right now don't address that, but that's something we need to know to make sure we help you coming up soon with some of these sessions. So feel free to leave in the comments. That will help us plan for the future. I want to make sure I say that before I forget it, and we get to the end of this and go, crud, I don't know what anyone wants to know. Granted, I know what I want to know, but it might not be as appealing, because I've been messing with dynamic destructuring and fun facts and stuff.
There you go.
But my first question is, how do you approach? So one thing I think is clear to the industry, Yeah, I'm going to say some kind words here. One thing I think is clear to the industry is you are a phenomenal teacher. You have a way of communicating across that people can read and pick up instantly and run with. What is this? What do you think you do differently the most in your approach to help people gain this expertise?
It's a great question. And the reason why I think it's such an important one is because I don't think that I am somehow magically more gifted or talented at this. I do think that I have a talent for teaching, but I don't think that's why I can get across to people. Um, a talent for teaching allows me to take a large body of JavaScript knowledge and divide it up into a good curriculum and use an effective pedagogy to structure that out over a period of time. That's what being a good teacher allows me to do. I have some good skills at communication and things like that. So that allows me to have a presence, right? And those are all things that I'm glad for. I'm thankful, blessed to have that talent. But the thing that you're asking about is actually something that I don't think you have to be talented at to be able to get across to people. And in fact, I aspire to want to inspire every engineer out there to be able to do this with every other person, that whatever it is that they've learned, that they share it with someone else. Even if you never teach anything, just being able to share, hey, I learned this thing, I figured this thing out, I challenged myself and I got this thing to work and I wanted to share it with you. And then that person is like, oh, I've also tackled that and here's how I did it. And now you're both like learning together. There's a word for this, by the way, and it's one of my new favorite words. I picked it up a couple of years back. There's a term that a researcher, an academic researcher in this field, came up with and coined. Her name's Nora. She coined this term symmathesy, Symmathesy. Symmathesy is literally like if you take the two Greek words that are put there, and the roots of these two words is literally a learning together system, a system where as people learn, the system gets better and helps people to learn more. And this is so perfectly describing what I'm trying to create for the whole community. And in little microcosms in everybody's team, I want symmathesy to exist in as many places and in as many forms as we possibly can. And so what I would encourage people to do is to look at it as anytime you learn something, the first thing that you should ask is, how can I share that with someone else? Instead of how can I then do that really cool thing more? I know I'm like you. I figure out a cool thing in code and all I want to do is go write a program to like experiment with it. But really the first question you should ask is, how can I in some way, shape, or form make sure to share that with others? There's a symbiotic relationship between learning and teaching, or learning and sharing, which is that the more you share, the more you learn, and the more you learn, the more you can share. And if you keep that symbiotic, that cycle, that virtuous cycle going, both sides get better and better and better. It's what we call a positive feedback cycle. The system gets better and better. You get more of that symmathesy going. And so I would encourage people to look at every opportunity that we learn, even the smallest thing, they figure out even the smallest thing. Ask yourself, what is some way that I could find a coworker or a friend or somebody else in a community on a project that I work on and share that with them in some way? There's a lot of different ways. It can be code reviews, it can be blog posts, it can be videos, books. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, but find those ways to do it. But back to your direct question, what do I think I do that helps me connect? Well, first of all, I take the mindset that says everything I learn, I'm going to try to figure out how to share with others. I don't take that knowledge and hoard it. I think one of the things that I do better than most people is that I turn around and reshare it, and I'm not afraid to do so. But there's a key aspect that makes that work. There is a paradox that exists, which is, and this is, it's not unique to me, so I can't take credit for it, but there's a paradox that exists, which is that the more that you learn and understand and master something, the less able you are to effectively identify with the people who have not yet learned that thing. The further you get from it, the harder it becomes for you to empathize with that person, with your earlier version of yourself. And I think maybe the thing that I model better than most is that I am constantly reconnecting not only with my previous self, the previous self who didn't understand it, but I am constantly trying to model in my brain, what is a person who's never seen this before likely to think and wonder and be scared about and be confused about? I am always role modeling that in my mind and trying to prepare my material for those folks. That's an empathy level. It's a human to human connection level. And some of us, I'll just be quite frank and honest, some of us kind of suck at this whole like human empathy thing. Some of us, that's not our natural skill level, a natural bent that we have. Some of us are a little bit more like clear cut, and it's like it's all about the ones and zeros. And you know, you hear things like the meritocracy and the ideas are all that matter. And if you hear anything, if you hear nothing else from me but this, hear this. What we do as an industry, as people, what we do is human communication. The computer is a secondary issue. We are not first and foremost slaves to communication to a computer so that we can somehow beg the computer to do what we want. What we are first and foremost is humans who are connected to other humans. And if you want to be connected to other humans in a more effective way and get your job done better and help them get their job done better, to create that sympathecy that I'm talking about, you have to develop the skill, the choice, the intention of empathy. You have to ask yourself, what is that person feeling? And can I put myself in their shoes? And even if I can't understand them, can I still respect them because they're a fellow human being? That's the thing that I have worked hardest at trying to be that to other people. And I hope and believe that that spirit is what comes through in the words that I write in my books, the things that I teach in my courses, the code I put out there on Git. I hope that that's what comes across, is that I care about other humans first before I care about the computers that may or may not actually execute my code.
That do or don't listen to us. Half the time they don't listen to us.
They don't, right?
But I think that's pretty phenomenal that you approach it that way. I really do think it shows through in the books. And I think it also goes to show we got to get you in the job hunt sector, because half the time what I'm struggling with is something similar. Not to say I take that as a profound approach. I try, but I don't know if I get that close. In the job hunt sector too, where a lot of people are also experiencing, they're dehumanizing the job. They're making the job about a computer, not about a human. And so like half the time in a really successful job hunt, it's when you also make it about the humans. And I like to call it, based on the Travis Bradbury book, emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is all about the empathy and people, and understanding others' feelings. So I think that's phenomenal. Yeah, we got to get you in the job sector some more.
I just want to reinforce that while some people maybe have the more natural bent to that or not, empathy is far more an intentional choice than it is just like, oh, I'm an empathetic person or not. It's an intentional choice. And that means that everybody can choose to make that an important thing that they ask. And so here's how I summarize this. If you're looking for like a little quip and you want to share this with, tell your boss or tell your coworker that you heard something from me, just remember that there are humans on the other side of those pixels. Okay. It's not just some like abstract, we're talking to the computers out there in the world. The thing that we do all day, every day, and we will for as long as I think I'm going to have a career, is we're going to be creating systems that connect people better. Computers are a secondary aspect.
Totally agree. Now, I want to make sure I get to my last two questions before we run out of time and go on, because we could probably spend hours here. And I'll try
to answer quicker. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I love it. I love the in-depth. I love the in-depth, but I also know part of my job is to keep us on track. So real quick, and not even quickly, maybe there's more depth here, but something I want to point out that I don't know if we talk about enough in the industry is JavaScript in interviews versus JavaScript in the job, and understanding the difference between the two, and potentially how can what are some different approaches to take for one compared to the other?
Interesting. To be quite honest, I think that the interviewing process across the entire industry completely sucks. And I would throw out the vast majority of it if I were in charge. And there's way more that I have to say about that. We would need hours more time for me to expound on my views, but the brokenness of the way that we match people to positions is actually at the heart of a lot of what I try to do, because I really believe that it needs to be completely upended. And
Yeah.
so if somebody were asking me to design the perfect interview, there wouldn't be any JavaScript in that interview at all.
Oh,
Because it turns out that JavaScript or any code is so far down the list of things that I think that we should care about that I just wouldn't spend the time on that thing. There's all these other things that are higher up in the list that I would care about. All the things that, quite frankly, if any of you are working as software engineers right now, you know that you only spend a small portion of every day actually writing code. And the global average for number of lines of code that make it into production per day per programmer is like 5 to 10. So it turns out that most of our jobs not actually writing code, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we do. And I would much more be interested in seeing a candidate be able to communicate to me that they can, for example, triage a bug issue. That is a thing that happens all day, every day in my jobs. I see people doing it all the time. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of people that suck at it, right? Like being able to properly know how to ask questions and to do so, again, in an empathetic way, and to have a good bedside manner, if you will, like being able to treat people with tact and with respect and
yeah.
not put a mountain of text when one sentence will do, and which I'm not very good at, by the way. I write way too much. But like all of those things are things that I would love to see demonstrated in an interview. I'd love to see, for example, let's take a piece of code that you wrote, and what if I filed a defect against it? How do you respond when somebody criticizes the stuff that you wrote that you feel really like proud of, right? That's a thing that happens all the time on the job. And that's a thing I'd like to see from you if I was interviewing you. That's a thing I would care far more about than did you use the let keyword or the const keyword or, some other thing like that. Like those things are not unimportant, but there's so many other things above the list to me. Now, in the job, I think that kind of going back to my refrain, I'm a broken record here, the refrain of how do we use JavaScript in the job? I think one of the most important things is the readability of code. It still blows me away. And Jason, you're going to remember that I told you all this in that workshop 8 years ago. It still blows me away that we spend 99 point almost 100% of our effort optimizing for writability. Make it so I can write code quicker, write less code, and have more of the code written for me and more of the code doing it for me. That is where our obsession is as an industry. And yet, again, we spend like 10 minutes a day writing code and we spend 7 hours a day reading code. Why aren't we focused on optimizing for the readability of code? So I'll tell you that the most important thing that I would look for in code on the job, the thing that you're doing with your code, is that your code tells me a story, that your code explains to me all the things that you were thinking. I don't care how efficient the code is. I don't care how cool and hipster and terse it is. I don't care that you used an emoji variable name. I don't care about any of that stuff. I need you to tell me a story about the thing that you're trying to do and how you approached it. I need to be able to understand that. That is what makes readable code. And I'll give you one, like, it's concrete, but not super trivial to measure. But here's a concrete metric for what I think makes better code. The best code is the code that survives when, not if, but when the inevitable cycle occurs where somebody says, it'd be faster if I just rewrote this. That happens all the time. We are constantly rewriting code that already worked, but somebody couldn't understand it, so they rewrote it. And then somebody later rewrites that, and then somebody later rewrites that. I mean, every program gets written like 400 times because little by little by little, we just keep rewriting the stuff that we don't understand. The best code is the code that survives that cycle. The best code is the code that so well explained itself that even if there was a defect in it, even if it wasn't correct, it explained itself so well that the person didn't have to rewrite it. They just fixed the problem. That's what we should be going for. So if you're looking for like, how do I write good JavaScript on the job? Don't look to write the hipster JavaScript like it shows up in the blog posts. Try to be that person who makes their code so clear and so obvious that everybody who reads it, the first time they read it, they understand exactly what you're doing. I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but that's my best answer for you.
No, I think it's what we need to hear. One of my favorite things, small story on top of that. So to preach that even more, like that's something at work I absolutely wholeheartedly am with. And there was actually a scenario about 6 months ago. We were doing something in production, something broke, something happened, and my top engineers were out. Like my top. And the ones who wrote the code were out. And so were some of the juniors were out. And this is the great thing though. You ready for this? Someone from another one of our teams came in, opened the line of file where they believed it was at, read the code in 10 minutes, made the fix in 5, had a PR up by the end of the day, and had it merged back in to fix the bug with a hot fix.
That's beautiful.
It was just amazing.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. And that's the type of stuff that out there, that's why you become even more valuable as a developer, is if you can do things like this. You can actually make your code written in a way that other people can come in and understand it and have the readability and the stuff Kyle's talking about. That is worth its weight in gold, especially when shit hits the fan. Like straight up, I tell you, I was so worried that day because I didn't look at the code for a while, and 15-minute fix, most amazing thing I'd ever seen.
It comes from, and again, here I am refraining this thing again, it comes from having an empathy with the person who's going to read your code, which might be somebody else, but more often than not, it's just your future self. 3 weeks from now, when you've forgotten all the things you were currently thinking about, it's your future self. Having an empathy with that person and saying, what will they need to understand about this code? And if that can't be obvious, if I can't imagine how I would go through. The trick I use, because I'm a teacher, is every line of code that I write, which by the way, I write a lot of terrible code, and maybe sometimes I get it to be slightly a little bit better, right? But all the code that I write, 100% of it, after I've written that code, I am asking myself, if I were to teach this, if I were to explain this to other people, how would I explain it? And inevitably, when I go through that little role-playing session with myself, where I'm imagining myself explaining it to somebody else who didn't understand it, inevitably I figured out, oh God, that didn't make any sense. That thing shouldn't have been there. It should have been up here, and it should have been called this. Giving things good names. I know everybody says like naming is too hard and we can't do it or whatever. That's the job. Like, I'm sorry, but the job is naming stuff. Stop making everything so damn anonymous, right? Yeah. Name stuff. Names are helpful. Code is for us. It's to communicate what you're thinking. So you got to spend the time to figure out how to explain the thing, and don't just rely on code comments. Not that code comments are bad, but a code comment should never duplicate the what. The what should come from the code. The code comment should explain the why if it's not obvious. So do whatever we can to try to empathize with that future person and say, what do they need to know to understand why I wrote it this way? That's the kind of code that I would like to see more of in the workplace.
No, I'm totally with you. So I've got other questions, but I'm going to end on one question right here. Okay. I'm going to end on one question because I know from the comments I'm seeing and the developers we got in the room right now, we've got a mixture of people who are developers, mid-level. We've got junior engineers here. We got a whole mixture. And what I want to ask is, what's one piece of advice you could give right now that will last a lifetime that you haven't given already?
Wow.
That's a tough one, right?
One piece of advice that I've never given before?
No. One piece of no, not never given. One piece of advice that you would give that would last a lifetime.
Okay.
Equally as hard as never given, I feel like. But
that would last a lifetime. Let me think.
And as you think about that, As you think about that, I'll give you 30 seconds here. For those of you here, I appreciate y'all taking the time here. We're going to wrap up here shortly after this answer from Kyle. Remember, though, today, check out that link to support the Kickstarter campaign. Comment down below with any questions or things you'd love us to address in the upcoming sessions. Because remember, as long as you join the Kickstarter campaign and pledge at least $1, I'm going to be investing some time and money in this as well, so that with the one-on-one sessions with Kyle, y'all can come join. As long as y'all pledge with me, y'all can come join in for $1. And I kid you not, I will not let people in that haven't joined on the Kickstarter to help out Kyle. So if there's something you're struggling with, let us know. Comment down below, because part of when we schedule and build these kind of set 2-hour sessions around this content, we're going to make sure we take into account your questions and what you're struggling with and how we can help, whether it's in the job or in the job search. We're going to be focusing on those two main things. So thank you for being here today, Kyle. Let's get back. Do you have what you believe is an answer?
Okay. From the perspective of engineering and software development, this is what I think will last the entirety of your career. You said lasts a lifetime. I don't know about lifetime, but I'm going to talk about your career. Okay. I'm going to use your career. I'm going to tell you that the thing that I believe that will, aside from all the other stuff I talked about empathy, which I would put higher on the list, trying to come up with a new thing that I hadn't already shared. Here's what I would say. The thing that I think serves engineers the best is when they focus first on understanding the problem and only secondarily on trying to solve the problem. I see far too often that people try to solve problems and then maybe later understand the problem. And that's the wrong way of going about it. More people need to focus on, if I understand the problem, it turns out that one line of code solves it. If I don't understand the problem, I can throw hundreds of lines of code at it and still maybe only approximating a fix. And I just can't tell you how many times as an engineer over the course of I've been doing this almost 30 years. Over the course of 30 years, I've done way more of those 100-line non-fixes than any of you out there. I've written more bugs. I've done poor solutions to it than almost anybody out there. I will say with some pretty strong confidence that I am chief among you at doing that wrongly. And I will tell you that every time that I took a step back and tried to understand the problem better, without exception, understanding the problem led to a better solution. That's the thing. That's the advice I will tell you your whole career as an engineer. Always try. You do have to be pragmatic. You do have to sometimes cut corners. But if you can understand the problem, then you can choose how to cut the corner correctly. Don't just cut the corner because you don't have time to understand the problem. If you don't have time to understand the problem, you have to push back and tell somebody, you got to wait. I can't even begin to make the right decision on where to cut corners until I understand the problem.
Yeah, let's put this into 3 practical uses right now. You're in the job. If you're in the job right now and you are working as an engineer, one of the biggest things I'm struggling with even today with a lot of juniors that are in working capacity is them getting in the middle of tickets, like Kyle's getting in the middle of tickets and then having to go back to the business analyst and say, I don't get this, or then having to go back to the designer. To Kyle's point, prime example today, make sure you fully understand your ticket you're on. Second example, you're in a coding interview. Next time you're in a code interview, this week, next week, do not lay down a single line of code until you understand that problem. Better yet, pseudocode first before you lay down that single line, straight up. Last example, you're in your job hunt right now and you're struggling to get traction. You're struggling. Don't just keep applying. Don't just keep doing leak code. Don't just keep on keeping on because that just seems like the right thing to do and try and juggle all the things you do at once. Stop and try to understand the problem. This advice, Kyle, love it because it's applicable in the 3 areas that I know the entire audience is probably experiencing one of these 3 areas right now. So I hope that gives you some actionable items. Would you agree with those 3 actionable items as we end today, Kyle?
100%. And I will echo especially the one you said in the middle about the job interview. I guarantee you, if I was interviewing somebody and I was taken aback by how good they were at asking questions, all the other stuff is going to be secondary. If I saw a person that took the time to understand it and didn't just start coding it, and because they already knew exactly and they made the assumption, they asked all the things, they probably asked me stuff that I didn't even think about to clarify. Like if I saw somebody demonstrating that they could ask good questions, all the other stuff I think we can probably work on.
Yeah. Love it. Kyle, last quick question. Did you have a good time today?
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for these questions. Thanks for the great chat comments that you all gave. And thank you again for any consideration you can give to helping the campaign, but even more than that, just spreading the word to anybody that you can about it. Thank you so much for that.
You're absolutely welcome. And, it's funny to the audience out there as we wrap this up. Kyle and I had only planned to jump on 20 minutes, have a quick little chat. And here you are like, this is great stuff. Like we could keep going on. If you think this is great, just wait until we do some larger sessions to help you, whether it's in hiring, in the interview process, or whether you're in the job. Just wait, because it's going to only get better from here. Remember, give Kyle some support today in his Kickstarter campaign. We'd really appreciate that. And Kyle, any parting words before I wrap it up and end it for the day?
I would just echo back, keep asking questions and keep remembering the humans on the other side of the pixels. And that is, I mean, I get people asking me all the time, like, how do I write better JavaScript? And I say those two things. And then I say, there's no substitute to learn how to write JavaScript than to just write the code. Don't be so scared about just getting in there and writing the code. I write lots of bad code and I put that code out there, and then hopefully it gets a little bit better. So don't be so afraid to just put out the code, write some bad code, and then try to make that better.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, we appreciate you so much for coming today. I know the community loves it. I know this will definitely get shared around. And if you did enjoy this and you're still here to the end, because based on the numbers I'm seeing, I know there's people here to the end, and I know y'all are here. If y'all would take the time, reshare this, comment this, share this with your friends, we would greatly appreciate it. And we will see you then in the upcoming sessions that Kyle and I will be doing based on this. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Kyle. We
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
And we'll see y'all again soon.